This is the SwimRun Cape Cod athletes meeting, and we're with New England Endurance Events. We have on this call, besides all of you, thank you very much for being here. We have Andy Shirting, my fellow race director, and Scott Brown, who is our swim coordinator extraordinaire. I'm going to continue to let people in. A little housekeeping. I do have you all muted, but I give you the option to unmute yourselves. Please don't do that unless there's a reason for you to be talking. For the most part, you'll get to listen. If you wouldn't mind putting in chat any questions that you have, and as we go through, we will answer them. Andy and I will kind of go back and forth, and Scott will add in anything that he can as we go along. So we've gotten all that housekeeping out of the way. Thank you all for being here, and I'm going to start my screen share. So just be warned, I'm going to take over your computer in just a second. And there we go. So we're going to start right off with the schedule, and then Andy's got lots of great stuff. But I want to make sure that you're aware of kind of how we're flowing through this. And then, of course, put any questions in chat. So there will not be a packet pickup on Friday. It is only Saturday. Really, you guys, you're not getting a bib or anything like that. We're going to give you a few items, including a swim cap and a buoy for those that are solo participants, and then we're going to body mark you, and we're going to give you a nice swag bag and t-shirt and all that kind of fun stuff. But there won't be a whole lot of things for check-ins. Some of you do triathlons as well, and there's usually all sorts of stuff. We don't have as much, so that should flow pretty quickly. If you are a long course participant, please arrive between 6:15 and 7:30. 7:30 is really kind of late because it takes a good 12-15 minutes to get over to Ballston Beach. So if you can really be aiming more towards that 6:15, that would be fantastic. The bus service, we have the Funk Bus. If any of you guys are familiar with the Outer Cape, Funk Bus is a cool funk bus. And you guys will love it. They usually play loud music and it's fun, and they'll bring you over to Ballston Beach because there's very, very little parking there. We need that for staff and lifeguards that are meeting and all sorts of stuff. So you will park your car over at the Wellfleet Elementary School, and that is 100 Lawrence Road in Wellfleet. That is also in the athlete's guide, and it looks like Andy has put the athlete's guide in the chat. It's the very top thing there. So if you wouldn't mind jotting that down, if you are not already familiar with the athlete's guide, which I hope you are. The short course will be starting at 9 o'clock, of course. So if you can arrive between 7:45 and 8:45, if you are a short course participant, that will give a chance to get those long course participants out without them having to wait in line for you, that you're not going until later. So we'd really appreciate that. For those spectators that want to be able to see the start of the race for the long course, you can get on the Funk Bus as well, and the Funk Bus will bring you back to the elementary school as soon as the athletes start off on their race. So you will have a way to get back. And as we mentioned, short courses at 9, and that's at the elementary school. Will start you off. The only other schedule to be aware of is the awards. And of course, there will be post-race prepackaged food that will start as soon as the first finisher comes through. And I think that is it for me right now. I'm going to pass it on to Andy.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the weather, but because we may have a little bit of rain, we are going to have some bins at the near the starting line. So if you want to wear layers, raincoat, trash bag, whatever, you can discard it, and we will bring it back to the finish line area for after the race. As for the weather, we are watching it closely. We have been conferring with our permitting authorities. I should mention we have 3 primary permitting authorities, and we have 6 other committees that we had to go through for this event. And we I had a conversation with the deputy fire chief in Wellfleet today. He reminded me, which I already knew, it's a small force. They don't have a lot of manpower. They don't have a lot of extras. Here on the Cape, there's a mutual aid system, so towns will help each other out. Even sometimes when it's a 2-alarm fire.
Andy, sorry, Andy, we've lost your sound. Still can't hear you.
We can hear him.
I can
Oh,
hear
can
you.
you hear me?
We
Okay.
can hear you, Andy.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can hear.
sorry.
We
Go ahead, just
we can
me.
hear you. I can hear you.
I think that was her way of showing that I'm speaking for a little bit too long.
No,
Um,
no, not at all. I just couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
Anyways, they can't run the risk if they feel their entire force needs to be ready to respond to public emergencies to have an event going on, which may possibly have an emergency. So they could pull the trigger on this. And that's something we wanted to talk to you about this. I actually put a stop to this. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the warning's there. I watched the 6 o'clock news, and it's nice to see that the storm is starting to turn eastward, or is expected to turn eastward, and that Cape Cod is now out of the cone. But if the storm is on the west side of the cone, it's possible they may surprise us. There's certain things we can do if we have windy conditions. We can skip the beach run because you can imagine the waves will be something out there. There's one pond of the 7 ponds for the longer course that is somewhat exposed. The others are sheltered. The nature of the ponds are that they have high bluffs around them. So Kathleen and I have swam in 35-mile-an-hour winds, but you don't feel it when you're out there. So that's a positive. And if we do have to take a pond out, what we will do is every pond has a trail alongside of it. So you would just keep running on to the next pond. Kathleen and I talked today. We realized we have a lot of people traveling from all over the country. I saw an email yesterday from someone from Houston. We have, I think, 4 or 5 people from California. We have a lot of professional, I shouldn't say professional, but experienced swim runners coming, as well as some triathletes from the local area and beyond who will be there. But we do feel for those who are traveling this great distance for the race. So what we'd like to suggest, just so that you know, and you can watch the hurricane path yourself and make the decision, is that if you do not live in southeastern Massachusetts and you're traveling here, and as you look at the forecast tomorrow, you're not feeling very good about it, I am told that by tomorrow, the forecast should be pretty close to accurate. I mean, hurricanes have a mind of their own, but that's the usual that they expect. Anyways, we just let us know, right, Kathleen at neeevents.com, and we will defer you to next year. For the rest of you, we do have insurance. Should we not have the event, your registration fee will be returned to you thanks to the insurance. But of course, that doesn't help travelers who have lodging squared away and things along those lines. I will mention that Sunday is supposed to be a spectacular day. So if you decide to come to the Cape anyway, you know you're going to have one great day on Sunday. But the important thing we need to mention is if you defer, if you say, okay, I'm going to defer to next year's event, then we can't then, if we are giving refunds to everybody, give you a refund because the insurance company will want to know, okay, who on the day of the race, who is going to race, and that's who they will refund the money to. Katie, you had a great suggestion about the weather on Sunday, and could that be a possibility? And it might have been at an earlier point, but as you probably have heard, another director in the area, Pat Littell, has put together a bike rally, which is going to have something like 500 bicycles going through Wellfleet and Truro on Sunday. So that pulls all the resources that we might have been able to have. So unfortunately, that's not a possibility as well. So after we run through the basics on this race, we'll be happy to take any and all of your questions, whether it be about the weather or something else.
That's right, a work call, now I realize.
Would you mind muting yourself? Andy, actually, I made you, sorry, a little thing. Andy, I made you host so you can mute everybody. So I think some people have, as they've come on, they've ended up unmuting.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, I'm clicking them in. Okay, so Kathleen, where should we go from here? Should we talk about the course or we want to talk about some other things?
I was gonna do just a quick thing on hydration, nutrition, where the restrooms are, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Do you mind if I take that over? All right.
Sure.
Great. All right, a few basic stuff. We will be providing a safe swimmer buoy. That's everyone will get a safe swimmer buoy, but only the solo athletes need to wear it. The others can just take it home and wear it during training. We will also provide a swim cap. And when, as I mentioned before, we will be body marking you. We're going to mark you anywhere that we can get that way, because you're not going to wear bibs. For those of you who have done other swim runs, sometimes you have these like ugly jersey kind of things. You don't have to worry about that either. We're going to mark you. Course hydration and nutrition. Sierra Sport is our hydration of choice. I'll show you kind of what that looks like if you want to. You might be able to actually order it now and still get it beforehand if you want to give it a quick try. But it's rice based, so it's really easy on your belly. And then we have all of the typical nutrition bars and blocks and goo and all of that. Restrooms / aid stations. The aid stations will have hydration and nutrition. The restrooms are, for the most part, porta potties, and they are at these 4 ponds here. Snow Pond is that very first pond, and then Gull, Long, and Great. If you go to the Athlete's Guide, Andy has done an amazing job with getting all of the maps up for each pond and run. Thanks to I don't know if Dawn Varnum is on right now, but Dawn did her run, put it on the site, and then we have it there. So you've got those to look at. The other thing was timing is only the start and the finish. Every year is going to be different, so it's not going to be super helpful for you to have splits. And the 7 pond splits are really difficult. Tethers are allowed for teams if you choose to use it. And of course, all team members teams need to cross together. Award ceremony, I think I mentioned before, was 11:30. I wanted just to show you that Sierra Sport. So if this is something you like to order, it is 50% off with this code, so that's a great deal. And we'll have some in your swag bags as well as, of course, being on the course. All right. Back to you, Andy.
Okay. So let's run through some of the highlights, and then we'll get to questions. The way we will mark the run course, and we've done this before, we've had 4 events in recent years that are similar to this and cover some of the same ground. And to keep with the National Park Service's rules about no fixed signs, we take little pink flags, the kind you might see Dig Safe use, or perhaps a landscaper who's applying something to a lawn. just a caution sign, you know, those little pink flags. No, I don't have one here. With a wire stake in them. And they'll almost be like you're on an Easter egg hunt. You are looking for those pink flags as you go. Dawn and her crew will have them generously applied, so you don't have to worry about like, well, where's the next one? Is it way up the road? You'll see the next one once you go along, and that's how you'll follow your way to the finish when you are running. There is one exception to this. The super short course, which will start at 9 o'clock from the elementary school, not from Boston Beach, but it starts at the elementary school. We'll get to what is the 5th swim of the long course. For them, it'll be the first swim, and it's exact same swim, exact same course. And because there is an approach that's similar, you will be following little yellow marker flags just for that first leg. After that point, you're with pink flags the rest of the way of the course. The long course athletes, portable restrooms are located at the start line. There'll be a trash barrel at the 2.5 mile mark, aid station and restroom at the end of the first swim. Aid station restroom will also be at the end of the 4th swim, that's Gull Pond, the start of the 5th swim, Long Pond, and the end of the 6th swim, Great Pond, as well as at the finish. So plenty of opportunities there if you so need. Short course athletes, in addition to the facilities at the start line, there'll be an aid station and restroom at the start of what will be your first swim, at the end of the 2nd swim, as well as at the finish. At the aid stations, you're responsible for putting containers and wrappers into trash barrels yourself. We will have volunteers out there, but sustainability is an important thing for our little organization. And SwimRun's a sport where most participants are conscious of sustainable practices. So keep this in mind. Last thing on the run for those teams, many swim runs have tethers between the 2 teammates. To be honest, I still scratch my head a little bit about it, but I'm told it has a benefit. So they are allowed because we, as much as possible, wanted to follow the general protocols of swim run races throughout the country. So let's go on to the swim. Here's what you'll be looking for on the swim. You'll be following the little pink flags, once again, to the entrance to a pond. None of these ponds are huge. I think the longest swim is, a 1/2 mile or so. There's 2 of them for the long course athletes, the longer course athletes. Your end line of your swim will be a round orange buoy. On some of the larger ponds, there will be intermediate buoys. They are yellow and they are somewhat cylindrical. So they stick up about 4 feet in the air. The rule is that you must swim toward the first yellow buoy and pass within 10 yards of it on your way to the second. And if there is a second, and on your way to the final orange buoy. Reason for this is simple. I mean, we will have guards out there in the pond, but this is a relatively small event. And many of you know sometimes when you go on a casual swim with your friends and everybody's doing their own unique sighting or lack of sighting, suddenly you're spread across a football field or two as you work your way through. And our lifeguards will enhance safety if you swim to the yellow buoys. There will be a time penalty if someone doesn't pass within 10 yards of those yellow buoys.
Maybe.
Somebody muted Andy.
Yeah, Andy, you got muted somehow.
Andy, can you unmute yourself?
Try now. I'm not
There you
muted.
go.
according
We
to
got you.
this.
We got you. Go ahead.
Okay. I think we're using up bandwidth. That's must be what it is. All right. Look for low 70s for the temperature of the water, maybe 70 or 69. But it's been hot the last few days. So I suspect that it hasn't gone down. Wetsuits will be legal, of course, because we're nowhere near 78. We're not going to be, but they won't be mandatory. Paddles, yes, that's a common swim run practice, but once again, not mandatory. Pole buoys, yes, but not mandatory. Safety buoys, there are a few swim runs that do not mandate safety buoys. There are some swim runs that mandate rest tubes, which are almost like a belt that you can pull and get yourself a safety buoy if you need it in a crisis. And there's a few other swim runs in the United States that mandate the safety buoys. Please keep in mind that we had to do a lot of fancy talking to calm down some of the worries of our permitting authorities. And so in keeping with that, solo athletes will need to have safety buoys. Team athletes won't, because quite honestly, some of the teams, they also want to use tethers on the swim. And that's the last thing we need is for safety buoys to get mixed up with tethers. As Kathleen mentioned earlier, we are providing everyone with a buoy. And even if you don't use it because you're part of a team or you have your own buoy that you like to use, take it and maybe use it just for your training swims. Fins are not allowed at this race. Snorkels are only allowed if you've provided a doctor's note in advance. And if that's the case, get that in the email to Kathleen as soon as possible. You remember, you must finish carrying the same items with you that you started the race. There's no, there's a parking lot at Gull Pond. Your friends and family are welcome to go there to watch you. That'll be the first point really where they will be able to see you, unless they go to Collins Road in Truro and watch you cross there. But you can't just say, okay, I don't need this stuff anymore and give it away. So you must finish carrying the same items you start. Lifeguards on rescue boards and escorts and kayaks will be out on the race. I think we're at 16 or 17 lifeguards, right, Kathleen? But still, there's a lot of water they need to patrol. You can pause your swim to rest at a kayak or a paddleboard before continuing. And please respect the opinion of the head lifeguard. Each pond has a head lifeguard. If they say, you know what, you may want to run the rest of the race, but please, no more swimming. I don't expect that to happen. If it ever happens, it's usually at one of our sprint events. But just putting that out there. I think I'm not going to lecture on and on about the course, but we will be happy to answer questions. This is just an overview that you should be looking at now of the course. Just for a quick orientation, this is Boston Beach in Truro. That's where the start will be. It would be wonderful if you're able to run along the beach. The sand is fairly firm at this tide, and it's absolutely spectacular, at least on a sunny day. You will, but the hurricane may nix that, in which case that's okay. There's an adjacent trail that goes into the woods in here and will bring you right back onto the course, and that will be clearly marked. If we are running on the beach, there is a ladder you're almost going to feel like you're at Mount Everest. It's only about 9 feet high, and it wasn't necessary in the spring, but some of the late spring storms created it. So you will have to climb a ladder and then go up a cliff. It's not one that necessarily you have to use all fours, but you may find yourself grabbing onto trees here and there as you work your way up the cliffs. These cliffs in this part of Cape Cod, they're up to 300 feet above the water surface. And they are sandy, and it's not what anyone would call a technical climb, but it is a climb, and be aware of that. And pace yourself accordingly. You may not want to be out of breath at the end of the beach run. Most of the surface is clay with a layer of sand over it, so it's relatively firm as you run along. You'll go through some pine needle forests. You'll go through some, well, the leaves are starting to fall, so you'll go through some of that as well. But it's quite picturesque and very calming. I think you'll enjoy it. This Collins Road here is where you'll be crossing a road that's not very heavily traveled. It's a former Air Force road that almost no one takes anymore. But you will then go on a trail that approaches Snow Pond. So this pond here is Snow Pond. Relatively short swim. I think we have it at 150 yards or something like that. You'll come out and you'll go on Old Kings Highway and head down toward Slough Pond, second swim. That one, I think we have it at about 440, quarter mile. We're going down to Higgins Pond. Once again, that's a relatively short swim. When you come out of Higgins, you're going to run for about 50 feet and you're back in the water again. And that's Gull Pond. And that's a pretty good swim there, about a half a mile or so. From Gull Pond, you're actually going to be on some paved roads for a short distance till you get to mile marker 6 here. And then you'll be back into Jeep trails. You'll relatively short run down to Long Pond. Long Pond is a little bit over a half a mile of a swim. It's also a dog leg left. You don't see the finish at all. We'll have multiple lifeguards out there as well as buoys for you to sight as you work your way around that point there and into the end of the run, the swim. You start your run, which is going to take you on a combination of paved roads and dirt roads down to Great Pond. And Great Pond, that's a relatively short swim along the shore, simply because there are no other access points. We would love to have you go across, but it's just not possible. Then you're on a dirt road, we call them Jeep trails here, to Dyer. This is Dyer Pond. And I should say the last two ponds, Long Pond and Great Pond, are all both part of the first of the shorter distance race. So shorter distance athletes, you're going to be approaching on Lawrence Road from the elementary school, which is here, to Long Pond. And then this is all in the athlete's guide if you wish to look at it in more detail. Across Dyer Pond you go, and now you're ready for your final 1.1 miles, I think, run, which is along relatively narrow trails, opening up to a power line stretch here. And then you're going to take Long Pond Road back and to the finish line right there. So that's the basic overview, and we can talk a little bit more about it if need be, if someone has a specific question later. But let's keep moving. Many of you will have friends and family there as spectators. We welcome that. Please take a look at the athlete's guide and maybe even ask them to take a look at it too. We have a section that talks about the best places for them to watch the race. it also talks about where they should not go to watch the race. For example, some of these Jeep trails, they're so narrow and there's so much briar and bushes, some of them prickly, along the edges, that if we have you folks running along them and some family member of one of the racers is trying to get through, you actually can't do it. The car comes to a stop, the runner comes to a stop, and you've got this tough issue. Please keep them off of the dirt roads if they can do that.
Oh, Andy, can I add to that? That's
Yeah.
actually with
Go ahead.
our permitting authorities, that would be a reason for us to not be able to have this race again if there are cars on the Jeep trails. So we have made a promise that we would not allow anyone except for the lifeguards that have to get out to some of the more remote ponds. But otherwise, there's to be absolutely no spectators in vehicles on any of the dirt trails.
Yep. No friends can run with you or swim with you either. I think touching on the weather, once again, we've already talked about the hurricane, but aside from that, if let's say there's a pretty good breeze, but the hurricane's far offshore, we may have to remove swim number 4, as I mentioned earlier. Also, I don't expect this to happen given what I'm seeing in the weather forecast, but fog, thunderstorm can require some of all of the swim segments to be adjusted. We're fortunate, again, in that there's a trail around every single water crossing on this course. We do have time cutoffs. They're published in the Athlete's Guide, and I don't expect them to need to be enforced, but we do have a time limit with the National Park Service as far as how late our athletes can be on the course. And they're going to have 2 rangers. They've assigned 2 rangers to be in there, keeping an eye on us. They're great to work with, but still, we want to keep them happy so we can have this race again in future years. The Athlete's Guide has a section of questions that we've often been fielding, and I hope most of you have read that. And I think that when it comes to the basics of swim run, because I realize there's some people who are new to the sport, and that's wonderful. That's what we're kind of hoping to accomplish is help the swim run movement that has been growing in recent years. That I think that please go to some of those resources that we've listed and read up on it. And you can learn more about swim run that way. And I think I'm kind of done. Kathleen, what have we not covered?
Well, there's some questions in the chat. I've answered a few as we've gone along. Katie asked about, if we canceled all the swims. We don't see doing that, Katie. I think that would be a question of if we were canceling all the swims, then I would imagine that the entire event would be canceled. We wouldn't just have you guys running all morning.
And she also asked what time would a decision be made, and my answer to that is when I get a call from the fire chief, which I'm hoping not to get. But of course, if we feel this is threatening, this could possibly not be safe for the athletes, we're going to call the fire chief and the rangers and everyone else on that. But we're hopeful that tomorrow there'll be more clarity on the path of the hurricane. That's what I'm told by some of the experts as to that 48 to 72 hours out is the area where they've got a pretty good idea where it's going to go.
Right.
Yes,
And
you.
sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. You'll be notified of the cancellation by email as well as by, we'll put it on the social media, the New England Endurance Events, Facebook and Instagram, as well as the SwimRun Facebook group, which thank you for all of you who have participated in that. It was nice to see some vibrant conversation and sharing some tips and that sort of thing about the race. What else is there, Kathleen?
Okay, so Larry asked about changing into race gear at the elementary school. Is there a bag storage there? Oh, like for your stuff. If some of our staff will be in that area the entire time, and actually we have our little NEEE trailer, Winnebago. So if you want to put something in the trailer, just Katie will be there. She's probably the tallest of all of the women, so it'll be easy to spot her. She's very sweet. She's beautiful. That's the woman you hand it to. So hand her your bag and say, hey, Katie, can you put this in the Winnebago? And she will. And then after the race, you can get it. So, so please don't everybody do that, but we can certainly put a few bags in there if you want to change before the race. If you're coming from a long distance, you don't want to be in your race stuff, the entire way. So that's no problem.
Kathleen, a conversation that some of us had, and I don't think you were there for that, was that we were going to take one of our tents, 10 by 10 tents, and we have sides for them, or maybe two, one for male, one for female, and possibly erect them at the finish line, not just for changing to race, but we were thinking more wet people wanting to get out of those clothes and into something else for the drive home or the drive back to the restaurant or bed and breakfast where they're staying.
Oh, right. Change intents for afterwards. Yes, definitely.
Yes.
There's a question about bacteria levels in the ponds. We'll check those in the next day or so. We do a sample and send that on to the health department. And at this time, that's actually been really good. Last year, this time, there's bacteria in all sorts of ponds. But so far this year, we've been good, but we will check those.
And some of these ponds on the course have never been closed for any reason. They're just so desolate and remote. But we will check them all to play it safe.
Right. And then there's a question about limited parking by the school. Yes, there is. We can usually fit over 100 cars in that area between the school. We can sneak some people in a little over to the side. There's the parking across the street. If you find, though, that not everyone has been super mindful about how they park and there's not enough room, then if you go down Long Pond Road and so in there, we'll direct you. If you go down Long Pond Road as you're going more towards Wellfleet in town, there's the Methodist church there, and it's the second church you come to on the right, and you can park there for free. If you give a donation, they appreciate it. But that's maybe a half mile or so. Andy, would you say Methodist church to the Wellfleet elementary school?
No more. Yeah, about a half a mile is right.
Yeah, so it's not bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Question about using rest tube. Yes, and we have that on the athlete's guide that you may use your own safety buoy, our safety buoy, a rest tube, or a similar device. I have a Safer Swimmer, I think it's called, that I bought years ago. That's the same kind of thing that you can pull. It's almost like you pull the parachute and out it comes.
Amy,
right.
Can you zoom into the show people what the detour from Higgins around Gull Pond will look like? The schoolhouse detour.
Oh, if we have that,
Yeah.
yes, I can share that. Am I still sharing? Oh, I'm still sharing. I didn't even realize. Okay.
There you go. Nope, one more.
All right. After one more. Okay, so here's from Slough Pond to Higgins. You're going to swim across Higgins. If you can see my cursor, you're going to swim down to about this area. where you'll come out of Higgins. So it's really, you're just swimming across a slice of the pond. And then instead of swimming across Gull, sorry that we don't have the line here, but we have the All Trails running map. Instead of swimming across this area, you will follow this road. And once again, the road is, it's a very sandy Jeep trail that comes around here. It's called Schoolhouse Hill Road. It will, once again, if there are any changes to be made to the course, we will remark it in the early morning hours before the race. So you'll just be following those pink flags. And of course, since we won't need a lifeguard, let's say on Long Pond, if Long Pond is pulled from the race, we'll be using those lifeguards as volunteers. We'll be employing them at the start of the swim and end of the swim to say, nope, no swim, go this way.
Okay, so Andy, there was also a question about the short course. Do you want to show that to them again? You kind of went through that when you were talking about the long course, but it might be helpful for them to be able to see it. I can share it if you don't have a quick.
Well, here's this super short course, run number 1. It's the green line, as you see here. This is the finish line, the start line, the elementary school start line for the super short race. You can run down these are quiet, very quiet roads, but you can run down Lawrence, turn left onto Long, you run along Long Pond. Once again, looking for those little yellow flags that will guide you right to Long Pond Beach. That's here. Almost looks a little bit, it's unusual for the Cape for a little bit park-like, but that's kind of what this looks like here. There's actually a parking lot here, which is a good place for spectators. And this is where you'll start your first swim. Your first swim is going to be a long one. It's going to be through the pond and up to the other end, which is actually right about here. So what else do we have, guys? Have we forgotten anything, Scott, that you thought of?
Nope, I was just going to say, Brad had just asked about one of the large format pull buoys. And I would say that our primary requirement for the safety buoy equipment is that it has to be tethered to your body. And so a free floating buoy doesn't really hit the safety goal that we're looking for, which is that if something happens to you, that the buoy stays with you. So, yep. Oh, it's on a leash. I think we will allow it if it's truly connected to your body.
Great. And then the other question was, oh, I'm sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, does that satisfy our primary requirement that it has to be attached to you?
Yeah. As long as it's attached to you, right? The other question was about Higgins, or how weedy are some of the ponds, because Higgins is kind of weedy, a little muddy. There's another one of the small ponds that's but most of them are clear and beautiful and wonderful. So so if you don't like one pond, don't worry, you got the next pond coming
How can anybody not like our ponds?
up.
Okay, so yeah, once again, yes, you can use your own safety buoy. Kathleen, you've answered, looks like you've answered a lot.
Yeah, so for the recording though, if there's anything that we want to express, because the recording doesn't always catch the chat. So there's a lot of question about, well, what do I do with that buoy when I'm running? Scott has answered that. You can carry it like a football. Some people deflate it all the way or part way and tuck it into the strap. And there are those that people have that are more like a little backpack that can stay inflated, trying to catch anything else that that we can have for those that wish to go back and review this or didn't get to be with us tonight. Teams are tethered. Bacteria levels was a question. I think we covered that. is there anything else that I'm missing that you guys are wondering about?
There's a question about swim skins. Yes, of course, those are legal.
I think Emily had a good general question about volunteers on the course, especially at key turns. So maybe just a couple of points about, aside from swim safety people on the water, we do actually have some folks scattered around the course, especially at some of the busier road crossings. So if you want to maybe outline some of those possibilities.
Right. Some of the trails of this race are trails that even on a nice summer day, if you went out for a walk, you might not run across anybody, or maybe you do, one or two people. So they're not well known, and we have a lot of volunteers, including people who live here on Cape Cod, who there's just not enough time in the morning to escort them all to every single spot where there is, okay, there's going to be a right turn here, so you stand here and point to the right. That's the reason why we have those little pink signs, because there's just so many little intersections and curves of the course. Just look for those pink signs as you're running, and you want to be looking down kind of anyway, because there are roots on the course. We don't want you tripping and falling.
Right. So there was a couple other questions that came up in chat that I had just answered, so I want to make sure that anyone else will be able to hear it. There is no Friday registration or packet pickup. All packet pickup is Saturday morning. We will not be taking any registrations. So if you have friends that missed it and they didn't get in, they can try again next year, but we will not be taking any registrations on race day. Another question was, I had mentioned that we'd have Sierra Sport on the course, as well as typical race nutrition, Cliff Bars, things like that. There will also be plain water, regular water, on any of those 4 locations where we have aid stations. Let's see if there was anything else.
Yeah, thanks to Sarah Sport, one of our sponsors. Thanks to Blue 70, another sponsor, Nauset Rental. And also I wanted to give a thanks to Chris and Chip of the Low Tide Boys for all they do for the sport of swim run, but also they've mentioned us a couple of times on their podcasts, which is very heavily listened in the swim run community. And Chris will be joining us on race day. He'll be racing, and I think he's got a little bag of goodies. He's going to be a bit of a Santa Claus, and that was wonderful to hear. And thank you, Chris, if you're on the call. Sorry, I can't scroll through everybody, but I'm hoping you're there. He's possibly coaching his daughter's soccer out on the West Coast right now. Okay.
All right. So I think that's all of the questions. Thank you all for being on tonight. Thank you for racing with us. We will see you Saturday. Of course, take a look at your emails and social media and our website that race details, the athlete's guide, will be updated with anything that we have, any news that we hear about the weather that's going to affect us, if permitting authorities make a call either way, what have you. We will make sure that we have that posted on social media, the race details page. And if it's something big, like a cancellation, of course, we're going to send you an email. All right. You all have a great night. Thank you.
Good night.